I remember the quiet before the Ardennai ship resolved on our forward display, and I remember thinking that quiet was the loudest thing I had ever heard. We had spent 4 months earning that quiet. 4 months of careful, halting exchanges. Pulses of structured light bounced off a relay buoy at the edge of Ardennai territory, each one a fragment of mathematics meant to say we mean no harm, before either side risked an actual word. I was the attaché assigned to turn those fragments into something a diplomat could sign her name to. I had no real business near a first encounter. I had a desk and a closet full of gray suits, but the Concordat wanted a civilian face on this mission, someone who could not be mistaken for a soldier, and so I found myself harnessed into a jump seat aboard the diplomatic frigate Meridian, watching a system that had never seen a human face come into focus through 6 layers of armored glass. Those 4 months had not been easy on anyone back home. The exobiology teams fought the linguists fought the Concordat lawyers, and everyone fought the military liaisons who wanted assurances no civilian negotiation could honestly give. I sat through committee after committee, where men in better suits than mine argued about contingencies for a species we had never seen breathe. What I remember from all of it is not the arguments, but the quiet certainty underneath them, that whatever the Ardennai turned out to be, we were not going to meet them with our weapons raised first. That decision had cost careers. It had also, I think, saved us. The Ardennai ship was called, in the best translation our linguists could manage, the Ninth Hymn. It looked like a cathedral, built by something that had never seen gravity work the way ours does. Towers of pale stone-colored hull curling inward on themselves, no straight line longer than a hallway, the whole structure breathing faint color along seams that might have been windows or might have been throats. It was, by every estimate our sensors gave us, 4 times the mass of the Meridian, and it did not maneuver so much as reorient, the way a held breath reorients when something startles you. Captain Anwar Reyes held the Meridian at the agreed distance, engines dark, weapons cold, exactly as the protocol demanded. She was younger than I expected a frigate captain to be, and steadier than anyone that young has any right to be. I had met her twice before launch, and both times come away with the impression of someone who had already decided, long before this mission existed, what kind of officer she intended to be remembered as. Behind us, riding silent in full stealth, our 2 escort corvettes, the Pale Lantern and the Quiet Hand, held position no one aboard the Ninth Hymn was supposed to know existed. That had been the compromise. The Ardennai would not permit warships in their approach corridor. We complied. We simply did not mention that compliance came with insurance. The ritual they required was called, in their tongue, the first verse. Our exobiologists had warned me what it meant before I boarded. Among the Ardennai, no stranger is granted a voice in their affairs until that stranger answers a sung challenge, live, unscripted, under time pressure that could not be negotiated. Refuse, and you were not an enemy. You were simply unanswered, and the unanswered were burned from orbit without ceremony, because ceremony was the entire point, and you had declined to participate in it. It was not malice. It was, I came to understand, the most honest thing about them, a species that demanded you prove, in the moment, that you could be reasoned with, rather than take your word for it from a safe distance. The cantor who opened the channel had no face the way I understand a face. A column of pale flesh, ringed with 3 resonant throat sacs that pulsed gold as it sang, robed in fabric the color of a wound just starting to close. Its voice arrived not as words but as intervals, a rising and falling pattern our translators struggled to render into anything I could hold on to. The literal meaning, when it finally resolved on my console, read, "We have heard your silence, now sing us your shape." I had expected fear. I had trained for fear. What I had not expected was how still the bridge went. Not frozen, not panicked. Just still. The particular stillness of people who have already decided what they are going to do and are simply waiting for the moment to do it. Reyes did not look at me for permission. She opened the channel herself and let our own answer play. Not a perfect harmonic, because we had none to give, but the steadiest tone our engineers could hold, unbroken, for the full duration the Ardennai's own ritual demanded. 41 seconds. I counted every one of them. It is the longest 41 seconds I have ever lived. Midway through it, the Ninth Hymn's weapon ports opened. Not fired, opened, slow and visible. the way a door opens when someone wants you to see them deciding whether to use it. Our sensor officer's voice cracked once over the comm, and then steadied. Reyes held our tone. She did not raise our shields. She did not order evasive thrust. She held the note, and she held her hands flat on the console, where the Ardenai's own optics could see them do nothing at all. That was when I gave the order I had no clear authority to give. I told the corvettes to decloak. Not as a threat. I want that understood. I ordered it because the protocol I had helped negotiate said that once the first verse began, nothing could be hidden from the Ardenai that mattered to the outcome, and two warships sitting silent at our backs, watching a weapon stand open against an unarmed frigate, mattered. Reyes looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I told her the truth was the only thing I had brought aboard, that I was certain would not get us killed. The pale lantern and the quiet hand shimmered into visibility behind us, weapons cold, drifting exactly where they had always been, doing nothing but existing in plain sight. The ninth hymn's weapon ports did not close, but they did not fire either, for 3 full seconds. I have the recording. I have counted them more times than is healthy. The Ardenai simply watched 2 warships choose to be seen rather than choose to strike. In the same breath that our unarmed frigate held a tone, it could not win by force. The cantor sang again. The translation took longer this time, because the pattern itself was longer, more careful, almost, though our linguists argued about the word for weeks afterward, curious. You concealed weapons, and then showed them to us unfired. You held a note you could not win. Which of these is your shape? Reyes answered that one herself, in our own language, and let the translators carry it across. Both, she said. We don't hide what we're capable of. We don't lead with it either. I do not know what algorithm or instinct, or centuries of doctrine, made the Ardenai decide that was an answer worth keeping us alive for. I only know the weapon ports closed, slow as they had opened, and the ninth hymn's hull color shifted from the wound red of the cantor's robe to something paler, something our exobiologists later told me was closer to their color for held breath than for relief. There was no surrender that day, and no triumph either, whatever the news services back home wanted to call it. The treaty we signed 3 weeks later was thin and specific, and full of clauses neither side fully trusted, the way every honest first agreement is. The Ardenai did not become our friends. They became something rarer and more durable than friends, a power that had tested us once, at the only moment that mattered to them, and had filed the results somewhere they would not easily revise. I left the Concordat service 2 years after that, and never went back into space. People ask me sometimes, at the kind of dinner where someone has had too much wine and remembers what I used to do, what it was like to be there for the first time anyone met them. I tell them it was not what the recruitment films promise. There was no triumphant address to a beaten admiral, no clever trick that saved the day, no speech I gave that anyone remembers. There was a frigate that refused to lie about what stood behind it, and a captain who held a single, unbroken tone for 41 seconds, while a weapon she could not outrun stayed open in front of her, and a column of singing flesh that decided, on the strength of that we were a shape worth keeping in the world. That is the part I never managed to explain well at dinner parties. That the bravest thing any of us did that day was nothing at all, just holding still, telling the truth, and refusing to flinch first.